That is a form of worship.
Yeah,
You were breathing real hard, so you were worshiping really hard.
I'm breathing really hard whenever I
But-
run with you because you run fast. Too fast. You run too fast. I can't keep up.
Well, you're getting there.
I'm
You're really getting there.
getting a little bit faster, I guess. Oh man, we getting food after this?
Yeah,
All right, 100%.
I'm so hungry.
So anyway, welcome back to the
Worthy Podcast.
episode
3.
3. And
We
we're
made
here.
it.
We made it. Hey, we made it.
Let's
Hey,
go.
the doubter said that we wouldn't make it, but here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Third time.
Third time.
Makes a charm.
Yeah, 100%.
It's gonna be good.
And there's some new things this time. Some new things. Location? No, that's not new. That's not new.
No.
The equipment? No, that's not new.
No, I think that's...
Well, I got you a gift, actually.
Oh, yeah.
If,
Got a yellow mic. Let's go.
if you're only listening on audio, then Divinity now has a yellow mic
Yeah.
that I got. I was looking on Amazon for another mic cover, and I was like, and I had the option to get like 2 black ones for $4, and I was like, I'll just do that. But then I kept scrolling,
Lame.
and I saw these color, like a pack of 7 different colors, and I was like, I have to get the yellow one.
The yellow one.
'cause,
Just
yeah,
for me.
so-
Just for me.
And that's what I ended up doing. So,
I think you should really put the red one in your mic.
no, absolutely. I'm sticking with black.
No, but like the red one, you know, like
No, we're not going.
advertisement, McDonald's,
We're not
like
doing a McDonald's advertisement.
red
Wait,
and
what are
yellow.
Chick-fil-A colors. Should that be red and white, I guess? We don't have a white one.
No, that would get dirty.
That would.
Red. Red would be good.
I think I'll just stick
That's
to
your favorite
black.
color too.
Well, it's only because it's in my name. I don't really like the look of red. It's just
It's in your name.
Jared.
Ah!
Well, anyway.
For some reason, I was thinking of your last name, Baldwin.
Well, anyway, today on episode 3, we're going to be recapping a sermon that I did 2 days ago.
Let's go.
Called "Get Out of God's Way," and hey, I thought that one went pretty well. Yeah,
It went amazing.
I was excited.
You were
for
pumped
that
for
one.
it.
I was very.
I
excited.
remember everyone was like, "Why is he so excited?" I'm like, "It's just gonna be a good one."
I hadn't been that excited for a sermon in almost a year, and so to preach that and for it to
Wow.
go well was awesome. Like
Yeah?
really, really awesome. I got some really good feedback, and also you can tell my excitement because my voice cracked during it.
Sounded like a little
Yeah,
boy
no, I know. It's not the first
hitting
time that's
puberty.
happened.
That was so funny.
It's not the last time that's going to happen. I mean, the thing is,
it's
like,
all good.
the thing is, sometimes I practice a lot, like the day of, to make sure that I have it down,
Yeah.
and then my voice just gives way whenever I, get a little passionate. That's what happened. I just went "Ugh," and couldn't take it back.
It
It's
was
like
like- it was like
toothpaste. Once it
what?
came out, and I was like,
I was like,
it's
what?
not.
Repeat.
I couldn't take that one back. So anyway, we had to live with it and move on. But that's what we're going to be talking about today, is going through that sermon and some highlights, some hopefully not low points. No, low points.
no.
No, just the highlights.
Except for
some
the voice crack.
takeaways. We're not talking about that. You have it in notes like his voice cracked here, and we're
Right
no,
there.
but yeah, we're just going to be talking about it, going through it, and having fun. Hey,
Yeah.
let's do it. So.
Well, we first started off with the story of Peter, and there's a lot of changes in Peter's lives. Before we really get into it, would you like to explain a little bit about the story of Peter for us?
Yeah, the story of Peter. First off, this is not the first sermon that I've done on Peter. In fact, if you go back and look at all the sermons I've done the past 2 years, you will see Peter mentioned a lot, but like Peter talked about in terms of stories of Peter,
Yeah.
probably 4 or 5 times. A lot. And there's a reason
That's
why.
a lot.
And I mentioned the reason why in the sermon is because Peter, to me, is such a relatable character. Because if you look at the stories of Peter, you'll see that sometimes he has like some really great moments. And I think in the sermon I called them Saint Peter moments in the book of
Peter.
Acts, where he has like some great moments. But especially while he's walking with Jesus, he also has some not so great moments. And I said, like, you have the Saint Peter and then like the Peter moments.
Yeah.
And I don't say that like to be like, oh, Peter's this. No, I say that because like I get that. Because sometimes I feel like I have like some really good moments. And then other times I feel like I have some more like Jared moments. And so I love looking at the story of Peter because it shows like Jesus' grace and redemption and it shows the calling, even though like Peter can be so broken and make mistakes and do weird things and say weird things. Like it still shows that God's calling doesn't run out on him. God's love doesn't run out on him. God's chances, like he just keeps on giving Peter another chance, saying like, Peter, I haven't given up on you, so don't give up on yourself.
Ooh.
And that's why I love talking about Peter. And so, and so in the sermon, we started off at a really high point to get the lesson, and then we went through two of the maybe not so high points of Peter to see like how he learned that lesson and what we can learn from the growth that he went through. And so, yeah, just because it was Peter, just because it was really relevant to me, like I was very excited for this one.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Very powerful.
Let me go check something really quick. Okay, we are recording. All right, now we can hop in.
Oh my goodness.
Had to make sure.
So for Peter and us, seems like God is about to do a new thing. And the question like popped in my brain. I'm like, well, if God's about to do a new thing, do we trust him with that new thing that we might be going to pursue?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that could be a tough one. The line, like, God's about to do a new thing was just something that I think it came to me while I was just practicing. And I was like, wow, God's doing a new thing. And then I looked at my own life and I was like, he really is.
He really,
like in the story, God did a really big thing and a lot of changes came, and you could see that God's plan was just running through, and maybe changes that people didn't expect at the time, and God's plan was being enacted in a way that people didn't expect. But what we see is God was really doing a new thing. And I looked at my own life and I saw like God's been doing a lot of new things.
A lot. Yeah.
Like a lot of changes. And the position that I'm in right now, I did not see myself being in just a few months ago. And that change has been a lot, you know?
I think it's been exciting.
It's been extremely exciting. It's
very
been
exciting.
Like very, very fun, very, very good, but like change nonetheless. And when I said that God's about to do a new thing, like I just felt that was relevant to my season because he's been doing a lot of new things, and I feel like he's only setting the groundwork for what is still to come. And so the question of trust in that new thing, that's a tough one. Because sometimes it's like we don't understand what God is doing. And so it's like that trust requires us to kind of let go a little bit.
Let God and let go. That's my
God
little
let go.
thing for you.
And that's kind of what trust is just like letting go. And sometimes that can be very, very difficult to do. And I kind of touched on that a little bit in the sermon, but yeah, do you have any thoughts?
Some encouragement with that is, later on, you said that God has already won the battle. So how can we trust God? Well, it's kind of simple. You just got to remember that God already won the battle for us. He already knows our plans. He already knows our callings for our lives. He formed us in our mother's womb, and he knew every little detail of our lives. I don't think we touched about that like last podcast about God knowing every detail of our lives, so we don't have to worry about what the future is going to behold, even though we love to worry about that. But really, it's all about that trust and surrender to God, and just be like, God, I'm going to trust you with this, because my questioning, my doubting, the things that I'm worrying about, I can't deal with that on my own. So I'm just going to give it to you, trust you with this, and know that it's going to be okay, because you already know what's coming next. So why do I have to even doubt and fear? Then another question since for that is, are we doubting and fearing what God has in store for us? Because if we are, then I think we're losing a little bit of faith. You know what I mean? We can't be losing a little bit of faith in God. You know, things are going to be hard and tough in our lives. That doesn't mean we should question God in a sense, or turn away from God in a sense, but we should just, okay, I'm coming to you, God. Just turn back to God. Just trust God. Just rely on him, because falling away from him is not going to do us much better. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. No, wow. that's a lot of really good stuff. And one of the things that you mentioned is I think it's in Psalm 29 where it talks about like you are fearfully and wonderfully made. But then you continue to read, like everyone's heard that, but you continue to read, and it talks about how God had all of our days ordained before we even took a breath. Before we were even born, and like I always put those two together, kind of, because it's like before we were born, which means like in our mother's womb, God knew He had our days ordained for us. Like He had a plan, He had a calling, He had like, man, this is what I need this person to do, right? Like this is what I need Jared to do, and this is the plan that I have for Jared. This is the calling that I have for Jared. And so then you back it up and you say, while Jared was in his mother's womb, God formed him. And so like God formed us for the plans that He had for us. And so I think that all goes along with like trust and the ability to trust in God, saying like God's given us everything that we need all the way back to the beginning of our lives. Like that's when He put it in us. And then you have the other part where if we're not trusting God, then are we doubting the plans that He has for us? Which is kind of a crazy question. Like I hadn't thought about that before, but it's true. Like to doubt the plans that God has for us is to doubt truth that's in His word, which is that He has plans and that those are good plans, and to doubt God because God is a good God who loves us. And so, yeah,
I think it said in a Bible verse, plans to prosper us long ago. So you make that little connection. You're like, okay, plans to prosper us long ago, plans that He formed in a mother's womb would prosper later in our lives. So even if it's not going good now, just know that your plans are going to prosper for the good if you just trust Him.
Plans to prosper and not to harm us. Plans to give us
a future,
hope, and a future.
Yeah.
And that word hope, I don't know why that keeps coming up, but it does. And yeah, I think it's a matter of where you put your hope, where you put your faith, where you put your trust. And it's important with all three of those things, especially when you're going through a season of change, which is what we see in the text, what we talked about. So
yeah. And that question that comes from the plan and calling, I said, why does God place callings on our life to pursue? Why does God place callings on our life to pursue?
You know, one thing... Why does God place callings on our life? You know, one of the things that I mentioned, I think it was in maybe episode 1, that the calling ultimately is to follow God. And out of that following God, there's a lot of opportunities that come. There's a lot of places that He might put us in. And I think that if you're really following God, then what your growth process is growing to be more selfless. That's a theme that you see kind of all throughout Scripture. Is just kind of this theme of like selflessness, and that like inherently like sin is selfish, and so to live for God is to be selfless. And so I think, why does God place those callings on our lives? I think it's for other people. I think it's to be a light. Not for ourselves, but for the people around us to see the love of God. And so I think, like, you think of the fruit of the Spirit, and I heard somebody say once, like, when a tree produces fruit, it doesn't eat it. Like, it doesn't produce the fruit for its own good. It produces fruit for other people to eat. And so love and joy and peace and these fruits of the Spirit, are we supposed to, like, internalize it and like hold it like a jar, or are we supposed to grow it like, are we supposed to be like trees and grow this fruit, and all the people around us can enjoy that and be like, can feel that love and that joy and that peace, which comes not from us but from God and comes from the Holy Spirit that's inside of us for other people. And so why does God have these callings? I think it's out of love.
And I think that goes back to like the greatest commandment that He gave us is love God and love others. Right?
Yeah.
And so that's just what you said with the fruit of the Spirit is loving God. And then if we can love God, then we can love others and serve others and be fruitful for others to see that God's love that's in us.
Yeah.
Perfect. So back in your sermon, we talked about Peter. And
my boy Pete.
Yeah, one of the stories.
Actually, can I say something really quick?
Yeah.
So there was someone in attendance with the name of Peter. And so I talked to him afterwards, and I was like, dude, it has to be weird. And he's like, yes, it is. It's weird. Because every time I would say, Peter, Peter, he'd be like, huh? And so, like, I was just trying to picture, like, put yourself in that situation where it's like, Jared, huh? Like, it would be weird, wouldn't it? I mean, like, Jared, I appear, like, once in the Old Testament in a lineage. Divinity.
Well, Jeroboam kind of sounds like
Jeroboam,
Jared Baldwin.
kind of, yeah.
So every single time you said that,
Jeroboam.
I'm like, oh, is that Jared?
It had to be weird.
Yeah.
It had to be kind of funny, though.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah. And so sometimes whenever I said it, I would look over at him and be like, I'm watching you. You better not be dozing off on it. He wasn't. But yeah. Okay. Anyway, that was just funny. So you can keep going with whatever you're saying.
Anyways, back in your sermon.
Back to the scheduled programming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In Peter's story,
yeah,
God made unclean people, the Gentiles, clean. Would you like to expand on a little bit of that story and explain how he made these unclean people clean?
Yeah. Actually, that would be an interesting study, that question specifically. But I can kind of talk about the story and some of the implications of that. Where Peter has a vision. So Peter's starving, so he goes and so someone starts making food. He goes up on a roof and he starts
like
praying.
me.
We'll get some food after this.
Yes.
The more we talk about food, the hungrier the listeners are going to be. Then they're going to click off and not finish the podcast.
Okay, fine. Go
All
ahead.
right, anyway, so Peter, he has this vision where a sheet is let down, and it says like four-legged animals and reptiles and birds, and so like presumably it's all these animals that were unclean according to Jewish law, which means they could not be eaten. There were just some
I
animals
wouldn't want to
that-
eat a reptile. I'm sorry.
Well, there's a lot of animals that I have no desire to eat, but a voice then tells Peter like, okay, get up, kill, and eat, and Peter tells the voice like, of course I'm not gonna kill those are unclean. I've
What are you
never
talking
eaten
about?
anything unclean.
Yeah.
And the voice comes to him a second time and says like, do not call anything unclean that I have made clean. And so that's probably a lot to chew on for Peter, but right after that he gets a knock on the door. It goes, I don't know if that comes through the microphone, but he gets a little, there we go. That's like some ASMR. Anyway, he gets a knock on the door and it's these Gentiles. And so usually the Jews would not associate with them. Why? Because the Gentiles were unclean. Right. And so, but Peter, who just had this vision, do not call anything impure that I have made clean, he says, let's give it a shot. Let's see where it goes. And so he goes to the house of a Gentile who would he have previously not associated with because they were unclean. And and then he preaches to them and this amazing thing happens. But I think what we see is like God, once again, that is just a testimony to God's love. Because all through the Bible, we've seen him move in the nation of Israel and God's chosen people. But now it's being expanded to everyone. And so the question of like clean and unclean, that's a weird question. But what we see is God's love and God's salvation, and that God being a savior is now revealed to everyone, not just the Jewish people. And that is something that's amazing that happens in this story. But
Oh, I hate that word, but. Don't say that.
and this one is a big but.
What?
So, but what ends up happening is that not everyone sees this as such an amazing thing.
But why?
I think you have it on your notes, right? I don't want to get too far ahead. But,
yeah, I do.
Some people will push back. Actually, go ahead. You can read
All
this.
right,
That's
all right.
good. I like that.
Well, with people who are seen as unclean now being clean, very encouraging, uplifting, by the way. That just goes to show how God makes changes in their lives back then and in our lives now. And when he makes these changes, we're going to have some people that just don't like those changes and they are going to tend to push back and be like, but God. And they're going to be like, no. I don't like this change. And they're not going to like it. And they said, I'm not going to listen to you anymore.
Yeah. There's always, so usually I write the whole sermon and it's like done. But then I'll rehearse it again and again and again. And then it's in the rehearsing that I become more familiar with it. But also I get like the one-liners. And one of the one-liners that came from that is that when God is trying to push you forward, you may have some people who try to push you back.
Ooh.
And so what we see in this text is that God is trying to push his plan forward and expand his love and expand the salvation to the Gentiles. But what happens is now we have some pushback. And so I said the same exact thing happens in our own lives. When God is trying to push you forward, to grow you, to teach you, to mold you, to bend you, to put you in a position where you become more like the person that he wants you to be so that you can live out the calling that he has for you, you might have some people who push back on that. And that's what we have in this story, is people start to criticize Peter. After this amazing thing happens, they start to go back to Peter and they say, like, Peter, you shouldn't have done that. Peter, you can't be doing that. And I said, in the same way, we're going to have people who, when God pushes us forward, they're going to say things like, come on, man, like, you can't go out. You can't, like, we used to always do this, man. It's our thing, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, are you too good for us now? Like, Mr. Holy, Mr. Jesus freak, whatever you want to say, right? Or you have, like people be like, they're going to push back when they see that change in you. They're going to be like, why? I miss the old you.
Yeah.
You don't need to be this new you. When sometimes God is trying to mold and form that new you, you're going to have people be like, you don't need to be that new you. We miss the old you, but God's trying to push you to something better. Sometimes people are going to try to push you back.
And that's just tough to hear. Because, I mean, it's just some people just don't like change. I mean, personally in my life, many times I'm like, but God, I was doing good, or I thought I was. Why do we have to change now? You know, and it's like tough to go through that. But also, what I learned is sometimes we have to be comfortable living uncomfortable for God. We have to be comfortable living uncomfortable for God. So many of times, like, we're just going to have to just listen, go back to the beginning. We got to trust in God and just see where he leads us. And he might lead us into uncomfortable situations where we might not feel like, I don't want to do this, God. But, I mean, if we're not going to do it, then we're just going to be, like, pushed to do it almost. Like, it's eventually going to happen. So I think sometimes we just need to be accepting and willing to do things for God, even if it's not comfortable. Like, for example, if you are a Christian, but you're like a closet Christian, and you felt convicted one night of, oh my, I need to be more open about God in my life and not hide him from people. My friends don't know about God. Then what we need to, like, change about that, what God might be changing in your life is, okay, try to be more open about me and share more about me. So then you try to talk about God with other people, and they're going to be pushing back on you because they'll be like, what you doing? Why are you talking about Jesus around me? I don't want to hear that mess. And you're trying to be open, and that's kind of discouraging. But then I think you just need to find some friends that's going to help you encourage and uplift those unbelievers, you know? You're going to have those friends who are going to be able to walk life with you with Christ.
And push you forward.
Yeah. And then maybe grab some other people who might be scared to be pushed forward like you were at one time and push them forward. And there'll be an unending cycle, if we can all do that, of getting more people. Of pushing them forward for Christ, not for anything else. We're not going to hurt them.
Get on the ground. Sorry,
Yeah,
right.
But change is going to be uncomfortable. And God will make changes in our lives. But that's all part of our faith. Our faith and our belief in God's going to have changes. Like, if we didn't have changes or in our lives, then how can we deepen our faith? Like, we go through so many storms in our lives, but that's all for God's good, so that he can mold and shape us even in our storms and work behind the scenes even in our storms to be able to deepen our faith and just give it all to him in that sense.
Yeah.
So even our darkest of moments, the best thing to do is, here, God, you can have it. I can't do it on my own. And then that's like a sense of deepening your faith right there, because you are surrendering it to God.
Yeah. We have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable for God.
Yeah.
First thing that I thought of was the story of Jonah, where God says, Jonah, I want you to go preach to these people. And Jonah says, he's like,
God, I don't
you know what? God, no problem. I'm gonna go buy my ticket. I'm hop on a boat, and he sails the other way.
I'm gonna run away from you. I'm
And
gone.
he takes off in the wrong direction.
Oops.
But what we see in that story of Jonah is that God sends a whale. Well, God sends a storm first,
a storm.
which is interesting, and then
People are like questioning him. Why is there a storm? Jonah's like, it's my fault.
Hey, guys.
God's doing that.
my bad.
He jumps off that boat. He's
And
like,
so first he sends a storm.
yep.
But then he sends something to get Jonah safely out of the storm.
Mm.
And so when we run
Ooh.
from God, he might send that storm and then send us passage to get out of that storm and put him where? Closer to where God wants us to be. Closer to living out that calling that he has for us. Closer to the plans that he made for us before the day that we were born.
Wow. But even in that whale, Jonah was in that whale. He's like, oh, this is awful. But then he like realized, okay, God, I know you're here. Obviously, I'm in a whale for a reason. And
This is weird.
once Jonah thought through that, he's like, okay, God, I'm going to do this for you now. Spat him out. And then he went to do God's calling that he had for his life. But if Jonah was just to go straight to his calling instead of backtracking and trying to get on a boat and flee away from God, then he wouldn't have to go through that. But he did. And I guess, in a sense, he built his faith more stronger and deeply with God.
Because sometimes we need to go through the storm to strengthen the faith to live out what God wants us to do.
Exactly.
Jonah could have just said yes. But the fact that he said no showed that God still had some work to do in his life.
And that he
And so
didn't
God
have that
had to
faith
send
yet.
something, right, to build that faith.
Yeah.
So that then Jonah was willing to say yes.
Ooh,
How about that?
love that.
Love that. What else do we
Absolutely
got?
love that. All right. And then back to Peter. Sorry, we're going to Jonah to Peter now. Peter realized that living for God would be living different, would be sometimes uncomfortable, and there would be changes. And then we talked about how no one likes changes. And yeah.
I
You
said I like change when it's convenient.
Oh, I remember that. When it's convenient for me, God, then I like change.
And I like change when it's not convenient. It's kind of weird, kind of strange. But anyway.
You think God will not change your situation so it would
God's
be
like, oh,
convenient?
sorry, my bad. Yeah, my bad, dude. I don't want to
let's
make it
reverse
inconvenient for
roles
you.
now.
Yeah. No, anyway, continue.
Oh, boy. Yeah, and then we talked about how no one likes changes.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently you do for some things. And then, yeah, from earlier we talked about being planned, that God has a plan for us and he already ordained that in our lives. And that sometimes we talked about how when God has a plan for us and we like run away from that and we change that plan for us and do it on our own, God is still there in the background. And he's going to go with you through that change because he already knew that you was probably not going to go through on that change. And he had a backup plan. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to do this again. So, in a sense, God is not going to change his plans, but he has a backup plan for when we change his plans and not go his way. And so, like with the story of Jonah, he's like, okay, I'm going to send a whale. Well, for the story of us, if you don't listen one time, then God's like, okay, well, I'm going to send you this thing. And then you will listen. And then sometimes we will listen and we'll be able to pursue that plan that way. But, yeah.
Well, the backup plan is kind of the whole story of the Bible. Because the first plan was the Garden of Eden, where God would be able to live in perfect communion with people, with his creation. And what happens is that we sinned. We sinned. We fell away from God. We ran away from God. And so the backup plan that he had to make was to send his son to die for us.
Yeah.
And so how about that? He's a God of backup plans. But not because his plans fail. It's because sometimes we mess up.
We mess up a lot.
And I think he makes those backup plans out of his grace for us.
Yeah.
I think that he makes those backup plans to give us another chance, to give us another shot. And thank God that we have a God like that.
Yeah, God is a God of second chances.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank goodness for him. Oh, yeah, and then I'm going to read to you Acts 11. You mind holding that for me?
I'll hold the notebook.
Thank you. Love my notebook.
I'm the host now.
Excuse me.
So,
Sorry,
what?
it's a big old Bible.
Just be banging it, bumping, bump, bump, bump.
So
What is
sorry if this wasn't the case.
going on? Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So we have Acts 11:17, and this is back to Peter, and it says, "So if God gave them the same gift He gave us, who believed in the Lord Jesus Christ, who was I to think that I could stand in God's way?" You really emphasized that
Bum, 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 bum.
in your sermon. You said, "Who am I
Mm-hmm.
to stand in God's way?"
Mm-hmm.
And I think that question has been a question that I have been saying over and over recently in my life. And I'm like, because I question God about some things. I'm like, who am I to question God? Why am I questioning God? And back to earlier, why am I doubting God, the plans that He has for me? So I think at some points we just need to sit back, relax, and let God take the wheel and just give Him the control instead of us trying to control the wheel by ourselves. Because sometimes that just, God's like, no, I have a better plan. Your plan might be what you think it might be. Like, it's not going to be all that. But my plan, it is all that. My plan will prosper. My plan will give you a future and a hope. My plan is bigger and better and greater than you can ever think or imagine.
Amen.
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 Yeah, but who am I to stand in God's way? Our same response to change should be getting out of the way for God and to use me in a way that's much greater than I could ever picture. That's what I wrote down.
I like that. Yeah. Just such a powerful line. You were with me when I read that too. It was the night after I finished preaching the
Yeah.
last sermon, and I was like, well, and I said, it's time for a new adventure, because that's what every sermon is, a new adventure. And I was just reading, and I was at the book of Acts, and I was kind of studying it a few days before, and so I went back to this passage, and I got to that line, I was like, that's it. That's the one. And so I immediately had the sermon title, and the rest of the sermon just so easily was built after that. Because it was like, who am I to think that I could stand in God's way? I mean, like, the thing is, like, what you would want that line to say is, why would I ever want to stand in God's way? Or, like, something like that. But the thing is, like, sometimes when God is trying to make a change in our lives, we kind of, we don't want to move, right? When God's trying to move us, we kind of want to stand still. But Peter learned his lesson.
Yeah, he did.
Peter learned that lesson. He said, well, yeah, dude, who am I to stand in God's way? He's kind of like looking at people like, why are you yelling at me? If this is what God wanted to do, then what do you want me to do?
It. Like, I can't change what God has in store for my life, so don't get so angry with me. But also don't get angry at God, because this is God's plan, okay?
He's doing a new thing.
He's doing a new thing.
And it's a good thing.
It's a really good thing.
It's a thing to prosper, to give us hope in the future. It's the plan.
Let that verse resonate. And then another thing that came from that is sometimes we go to God with our concerns instead of asking God what His concerns are.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That is better worded than I had in the sermon.
And if you think of it this way, that prayer is like, Lord, let your will be done. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of us being, dear God, please help us this and this and this and this and this, it'll be like, dear God, I have these concerns, but I know that whatever may come of this, let it be your will and not mine. Let your will flourish and not it be mine. So that goes back to, who am I to stand in God's way? Just think of God's will for your life is so much greater than you could ever imagine. So the prayer is to let God's will be His. And whatever that might flow from that, it's going to be storms, it's going to be trials like we talked about. But that's just going to deepen our faith throughout our life. So that when bigger things come, and we already think we're facing bigger things, we can be able to face those too, you know?
Yeah. The Lord's Prayer is sometimes whenever I want to sit down and pray and I just don't really know what to say, then I go back to the verse, and Jesus is like, so then this is how you should pray. And we have the Lord's Prayer. And it starts off with, Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. And I view that as like, it starts off with an acknowledgement of who God is. And I think it kind of sets the heart posture of like, who am I talking to? And that's something really important to the first thing in prayer.
Yeah.
But then it goes into, let your will be done. Let your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. And it's interesting because it's not like, here's what I want. Part of it is, Lord, give us today our daily bread.
Yeah.
Give me what I need.
Need, not want.
But then he goes into, like, let your kingdom come. Let your will be done. And he says, this is how you should pray. This is the heart posture that you should approach God with. And so when Peter says, who am I to stand in God's way? Peter's saying, like, hey, let his kingdom come.
Yeah.
Let his will be done. Not mine. He talks to the people who confronted him, not yours.
His
let God's
posture
will be
was
done.
fixed in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we're talking about plans. We're talking about God's will for our lives.
Yeah.
And then we get into the deep, deep topic.
Can I say it?
Oh, yeah, you can say it.
The only one who does not want God's plan to come to fruition is the devil. And the consequences of that are felt in many, many, many different ways. Let's talk about it.
All right. So that line is very powerful of yours. And you stated that, yeah, he doesn't want God's plan to come to fruition because devil's terrified. If the devil sees something that God's plan is about to prosper for something, he's going to be like throwing every little thing to try to not make that happen.
He'll throw the kitchen sink at you.
He really will. And I think last week, me and you kind of experienced that a little bit.
Yeah.
Anyways, we'll just give you a brief story. So we're about to film a podcast, and I think the devil was working on both of our ends, and we kind of got a little bit agitated about ourselves or about each other, and we're like, oh, I'm just so angry with you, and you're like, oh, I am too. And I'm like, well, why do we feel this way? And we're like, oh, maybe it's the devil trying to split us apart. And yeah, it was definitely him because he was scared about us trying to film a little podcast for the God. And he's like, no, I don't want that to happen. But so that's just like an example of how the devil's just going to try to work in your life and try to split something apart. In our sense, it was, we're about to film a podcast. Let's see if we can make them mad at each other so they don't even want to look at each other, so they don't even film my podcast.
Yeah.
Right? But in that sense, we came back together and we're like, oh, this is the devil's work. We're not going to let this happen. And then we filmed the podcast. Like, ha, got you there. And we got the devil back.
Yeah.
Really funny.
That's why I like starting off the episode. I said episode 3, we made it. We made it because it's
made it.
There's been some little ups and little downs, you know, and but we're still here. We're still filming, and yeah, there's definitely a time where I just like I mean, you already said it. We're just a little irritated, we were a little agitated, and
all right.
And then I was just praying, and then I was just reminded the devil's always on the move, trying to, hinder the plan of God. And so I shot you a text.
Yeah.
And I was just like, hey, I forget what it said, but it was just kind of like that, pretty much.
It was saying, something of, not, don't let the devil get under your skin, or the devil's trying to work really hard or something. Yeah. And I'm like, I look back into that, I'm like, oh, this is why.
Yeah, yeah.
And then,
which is really funny because I didn't know you were annoyed at me when
I didn't know either. So when we came together, we're both annoyed at each other. I'm like, that little devil, he done got us trying to make us mad. And I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah, and we've kind of dealt with that in just some random situations. But the one thing that's always nullified that was finding truth. And I think that's really, really important thing to emphasize because, what would happen is there would be a misunderstanding, there would be a wrong assumption, there would be a lie, there would be something that just wasn't true, and we talk it out and we find the truth, and that's what made things better, I guess.
It's like the truth will set you free.
Yeah.
But those lies, they're just going to try to tear you apart.
Mm-hmm.
Devil trying to tear you apart.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you find the truth, when we talk it out
Mm-hmm.
and get both sides of the story, they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And we find the truth in each other, and we're like able to come back from that so much stronger.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate you being patient.
patience is key. And also, we was talking about patient and in your sermon a little bit, and how we was talking about God was just so patient with Peter. so patient with Peter.
Oh, he's been patient with me too. So
I think we was talking about he's so patient with us, and he knows our concerns, but he still created us. God knew what trials, what temptations, what things were going to lead us astray, but he still created us because he loved us.
And he still called us.
And he still calls us to do those things because he loves us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very important, patience.
Yeah. I don't fully understand it, God's patience for me. Or, I mean, you can look at the Bible for the other characters, because like God calls them to do this thing and we mess up and we make mistakes and we fail at seemingly what God has called us to do. But in the stories of Peter that we looked at, there was a redemption, there was a renewal, there was a restoration, there was grace that was shown. God's grace will always be greater than our mistakes. And I found that to be true in my life, where a lot of times the only one who disqualifies me from my calling is like myself. And just like, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I'm good enough for this. I think I'm too far from God. I don't think I'm worthy of this. I don't think I have enough. And then most of those lines are what I said is the lies that the devil tries to put in our heads.
Yeah.
And try to attack us with. And so I think that, like going back to God's patience, it's something that you can't teach or talk about. You need to go through it and you need to experience to understand it. And so I think with his patience, right along with that is grace. And learning God's grace is not something that you can read from a book. It's something that you have to go through and to receive for yourself. And it has to be authentic to you. And I've gone through that. Peter went through that. And so, it's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing.
Yeah. And you was talking about Satan again with that patience that you was talking about. And it reminded me how Satan will stand in your way to stand in God's way. He will stand in your way to stand in God's way so that we can't see God, because he just wants to be in your way through sin and temptation and through your faults. So we just need, like in Matthew 16:21, you hold that for me.
I'm the host now. No, just
No.
kidding. I already made that joke once.
Or sorry, Matthew 16:23. It was going back to Peter, and it says, Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You're a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns."
Yeah. That comes right after a verse where Jesus tells his disciples, like, hey, in a little bit, I'm going to Jerusalem, I'm going to be handed over, I'm going to be killed, and then I'm going to rise again. It's like, hey, good news. But Peter takes him aside and rebukes him and says, Lord, this shall never happen to you. And it's that thing where Jesus says, here's the plan. Peter says, no, that can't happen. And then what Jesus says is, get behind me, Satan. And that part really, really stuck out to me, because there's a lot of lessons that you can take from that. But I'll defer to your notes on this one before I start going off. So.
Yeah, and so how do we put Satan behind us? How do we not let Satan in? And I wrote down is, you have to have your sight on Christ. See, in that moment, Peter's sight was Satan. He had Satan standing in his way instead of God. So was his sight on Christ? No. So I think you really need to fix your eyes on God. So that way you can be like, woof, and put Satan behind you.
Yeah, one of the things you said earlier was that Satan will do his best to get in the way so that we can't see God. And that was something that you said. You said,
yeah.
But
I'm like, I didn't even realize I said that.
No,
wow.
but that I was like, yeah, no, that's 100% true, because like that's what happens is like what happens. He tries to distract us. He tries to pull us away. He tries to tell us lies. If we were to go to God, then we would be focused and we would know the truth. So that's what he doesn't want us to do. Above anything else, he's going to try to keep us and steer us away from that by distracting us and by filling us with lies and as much as he can with doubts and whatever. And so what you see in Peter is that Peter, he didn't see the bigger picture. He didn't see the plan that God had. He didn't trust God on this one. He said, what makes sense for me is having Jesus with me, because that's been good so far for the most part. And that's what he wanted. He was like, I don't want things to change. I want to keep things going this way because things have been working this way. When God was saying like things are going to change. And Peter's like, no, but that was the plan. And the only one who wanted to get in the way of God's plan was the devil. And so that's why Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. So there's so much to that. Yeah.
And yeah. So to move on past the Satan topic, we had Peter. Peter again, yes. Peter was willing to lay his life down for God because he loved God. Would you like to expand on that story?
Yeah. So in the Last Supper, all the disciples are gathered around a table, and Peter tells Jesus, hey, I'm willing to lay my life down for you. Jesus says, you're going to deny me 3 times. And Peter says, deny you? No, I'm willing to die for you. Like I will literally die for you. And he promises Jesus this. And then he has an opportunity to prove it. And you know what's weird is that he does.
He does prove it.
Because it says no one else moved. It says one person. Only one gospel gives us a name. Only Peter drew his sword when there was a whole party of people to arrest Jesus. Only Peter drew his sword and started attacking. Peter, in that moment, was essentially saying, I'm ready to die for Jesus. That's what he was prepared to do as he charges in with his sword all alone. And so I could only think, like, why would he be willing to do that? That's out of love. Why would you be willing to lay your life down for someone? That's out of love. And so Peter, he's like, Jesus can't die. And so he's like, I promised Jesus that I would die for him. I'm going to lay my life down and in that prove my love for him. And so he says, Jesus, I'm willing to die for you because I love you.
But then we see Jesus like, no. I'm laying my life down for you because I loved you.
Yeah. And you can tell that story so many different ways about how God laid his life down. Why? Because he loved us. And every time, every different way you say it, you learn just a slightly new aspect of it. It hits just a little bit different. And for me, that was just powerful. It was just a different expression of God's love. That, like, in this emotional moment for Peter, God was like, no. I'm going to die for you because I love you. I know that you're willing to give yourself up for me, but no, Peter, I'm going to give myself up for you. And that expands to everyone else as well, that God laid down his life out of love for us. And it's such a powerful thing. And I was going to say something else, but now I'm blanking on the other direction that I was going with that. Oh man. Jesus said no, because I love you. Yeah. And so right after that, I kind of had this takeaway, this thing that I realized, because in this moment, as Peter was essentially told to stop resisting the people who are trying to arrest me, is what Jesus was telling Peter.
Oh yeah,
which makes no sense, right?
No.
Why would Jesus just be giving himself up willingly? And so Peter in this moment is probably one word: confused. He's probably a lot of things, but he's confused at this point.
We saw that Peter took out his sword. He cut the man's ear off. And then Jesus was like, no. And then Jesus was like, I'm going to heal them. Why,
He heals the person that was trying to arrest
why'd
him.
you cut the ear off
Yeah,
this
yeah,
person?
yeah.
I was trying to die for you. You messed up my plan again, you know? And so, yeah, he healed the man's ear. And then he's like, Peter, let God and let go. Peter's like, let God. No, God was like, sorry, Jesus. Jesus was there. Jesus said, let God and let go. And so that moment, Peter's like, okay, Jesus, you can die for me because you love me.
Yeah, and I'm gonna just go ahead and jump into the next part of the notes
yeah, of
here
course.
because I kind of like, as I was putting myself in Peter's shoes, I was like, yeah, this, like I said, this makes no sense for him. He was probably very confused, and I was like, yeah, there's been a lot of times in my life where it doesn't really make sense and I'm really confused. I'm like, I felt like I should be further along by now. I felt like I should have this by now. I felt like I shouldn't be doing this anymore. I felt like I should have grown past this. feel like I should have, whatever, insert the blank. And it doesn't make sense why we're not there yet.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense what's going on around us. It doesn't make sense what God is doing. It doesn't make sense what God is changing. It doesn't make sense when he starts enacting his plan. It's like, God, this is not what I thought it was going to be like. And in that confusion, what's the one lesson that we learn? Why is God doing it? Well, in the story, he gave his life up. Why? Out of love. And when all these changes are going on in our lives, why is he changing these things? Why is he moving? What is he doing? He's doing it out of love. Mm-hmm. And so even in the times when we don't understand what is going on, we need to remember this. What God is doing in our lives, he is doing out of love.
Yes.
That's something that really stuck out to me in the text.
Yeah. And this is something that can go back to us too, where it says that God wasn't done with Peter. He wasn't done with Jesus. And he's not done with us yet. Why? Because he still has a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because he wants to see that plan prosper. Why? Because he loves us.
You sound like a preacher out here.
Why? Because in the end, our lives are to bring God the glory and honor that he so deserves. And so, in the end, if we live out that calling and that purpose and that life and that love for God, then we'll be able to live that life for eternity with him. And I think that's the greatest reward that we can ever get. Even if it seems like it's so far away, you never guarantee another day. And that's exciting, like, ooh, I get to go to heaven early, but also it's like, if we're not there yet with God, then that's an encouraging moment to be like, okay, let me just go to God now. Let me just give all my sins and burdens to him. Let me just live a life out for his plan and calling, so that one day when I am before his throne, I will not question where I'm going to go. I know where I'm going to go because I know God loves me and I live that life for him. So I'll get to spend eternity with him.
Yeah.
That's going to be hard.
Yeah. That's a different angle than the one that I was taking, where it's like in that confusion, in that uncertainty, what do? We surrender. I think that's what you were saying. And that's, yeah. No. It can be really difficult to, like you said, just let go, to trust, to give it to God. But ultimately, Jesus set the example by surrendering on a cross, and then he was raised again. And he calls us, whoever wants to follow me must deny yourself.
I was going to read that. Give me a second.
And now we're going to read text
yes!
from the Bible.
I was about to get to that. I'm like, well, and actually, after it says that, get behind me, Satan, you're a stumbling block. Then it says in Matthew 16:24, then Jesus said to his disciples, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it.
I don't even know that you were going there, so I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
I know you're about to say my verse,
Great minds think alike.
but it says it right here in this text. First, Satan, get behind me. Second, it says, whoever wants to be my disciple, you got to deny yourself. So you got to know that you're sinning and be like, God, I'm sorry that I sinned. I'm sorry that I steered the wrong direction my whole life. And I see that you're a God who gives mercy, a God who can forgive, and a God that loves me, even though I might have messed up.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, if you want to save your life, you have to lose it. You have to get saved and live out a new life and a new calling for Christ instead of going back to the old life and old ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In the midst of that change, in the midst of that uncertainty, we find what is the response that we're called to do? It's surrender. Where do we find that? In the text right after, where Jesus tells Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You're a stumbling block to me. You do not have the concerns of God in mind, but merely human concerns." And he follows that up with, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must," what's the first one? Deny themselves. What does that mean? Well, it's saying, hey, here's what I think. Here's my plans. Here's what I want. Here's my dreams. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves. We need to put those things aside. We need to say, God, I'm going to take these things that I want. I'm going to take these ideas that I have, and I'm going to lay them at your throne and deny myself, because I trust that you have greater things in store for me.
And let your will be done.
Let your will be done. Then the second part is take up your cross, which implies that it's not going to be easy. You need to choose the hard way. You need to choose to follow God, even when the easier thing would be not holding integrity, would be telling a lie, would be just taking it while no one's looking. We need to take up our cross. We need to choose to do the hard thing if that's what Jesus calls us to do. And then the third thing, deny yourself, take up your cross, and what? Follow me. And that is the call. In the midst of the uncertainty, in the midst of the change, in the midst of when we don't know what to do, when we don't know where to go, when we don't know what is happening, what are we supposed to do?
Follow me.
And if we do that, if we hold the faith, if we trust in God, if we let go and trust that He has greater plans for us, and if we realize that those plans were made out of love for us, then let me say this. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
Brings me to a song. Everything's going to be okay. Sometimes faith has growing pains. Let that be a testimony. Sometimes our faith's going to have growing pains. Sometimes it's going to be hard, like you said earlier. But just know everything's going to be okay.
As long as we're walking with Him, staying faithful with Him, following the call to follow Him, it's going to be okay. And at least for me, that's all I got.
And that is all I got too.
Well then, ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the end of the Worthy Podcast, Episode 3. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope that we were able to provide some value to you, encourage you, uplift you, affirm God's calling on your life. And that's all from us.
Yes. And subscribe if you want to hear from more. Turn on post notifications if you want to get this weekly.
Yeah.
And like the video if you absolutely love it.
Amen to that.
Alrighty. Well, we're Jared and Divinity signing out.
Peace. And cool intro music.
Ba, 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 ba.
Ba, ba, ba.